Hi, my name is Bob Vanderdonk. I will show you today some tricks around the unique file name option in Inventor's project file. Where can you find this file name option? If you open the project editor, you can find this option right at the bottom of the options folder in the project file, and it's called using unique file names. By default, the option is set to no. What exactly happens when you set the option to yes, and what is the purpose of this option altogether? I will explain that in the next couple of slides. Typically, users restructure Inventor files on a disk drive. They move files around between folders. That is the scenario where this option will be very helpful. It helps you to quickly detect unresolved files. When you move files around, the file name very often stays identical. When you turn this option on, Inventor identifies quickly the files with the same file name, and you don't have to browse to the location of those files. Inventor will find them for you. One caveat for this option is that it affects performance because we search throughout the entire disk drive. It can take quite a bit of time when you have a lot of files sitting in your folders. So my suggestion is to turn the option off or turn the option on just for a limited amount of time, just enough time to resolve your files, resave your resulting Inventor assemblies and drawings, and then turn off the option in the project file. Here are a couple of examples on how to use the option. The three scenarios that I will present you are very similar in nature, but they have very slight nuances that are important. So please pay attention to the different scenarios. Here is scenario 1. This is the simplest scenario where you just move a part to a subfolder. This is what you would do when you restructure files on your disk drive. The initial situation is a workspace which I call WS with an assembly that contains a part 1 which sits in the same workspace. There is a subfolder there, but it's empty for now. Then I move part 1 to the subfolder, which gives me this result. If I now try to open the assembly file with the default setting, which is no, I would see the regular resolve link dialog that I show you here. Nothing fancy, nothing unusual. However, when you set the option to yes, you will no longer see that resolve dialog come up, and the assembly automatically gets resolved to the part in the subfolder. So it is ease of use, faster for you, if that is the intent, of course. How can you verify that the right part is used, or that the part in the subassembly is used? Well, you simply can open Design Assistant, and in the tooltip of Design Assistant you see that it points to ctemp/sub. So the conclusion in for this scenario is, in case you move parts around, the using unique file names option helps you open assemblies without the resolve prompt. Let's have a look on the real Inventor, and let's see a little demo on how this works. Here I go to the project file and I create a new single user project. I call it something like test duplicate files, and I place it in the C temp folder as my workspace so that I match the PowerPoint presentation. The option is set to no, and I'm just checking here that ctemp is indeed my workspace. So I open a file that I created beforehand. It's just a file with an extruded text, and I place this file in an assembly. I just grab the workspace part and save my assembly. I call it A. So that's my setup. Nothing fancy about this. Just two files in my ctemp folder together with my IPJ file. I now create a subfolder called sub. And we will use that subfolder to move my original file to. So I'm physically moving my files on this drive. Just verifying that we have the option set to no. This is the default behavior, by the way. So if I now open the assembly, you will see that I get the resolve dialog. So this is as expected. The user is forced in this scenario to manually resolve the file, so that's where you get hit time-wise. So let's move the file back to the original position so that we can go back to the original situation, but this time we compare with the yes option for using unique file names, and we will see that Inventor will react differently. So we open the file, everything is fine here, the file is in its original location. So when we now move the file to the subfolder and we open the assembly, you will see that there is no dialog whatsoever. A big time saver when you consider that this could happen on large assemblies. So in Design Assistant, I'm just using this as a verification check to see what file exactly gets used. So if I put my mouse over the file, you see that it comes from the ctemp subfolder. Let's have a look at a second scenario, a slightly more complicated situation where we move the part out of the cone of influence of the project. This is a big word for saying that we either rename a part, or we delete a part, or move it really to a different disk drive. So here's the situation. We start with an assembly in the workspace, which I call WS, and you use part 1 from that workspace. We also have a part with the same name in a subfolder of the workspace. However, that part might have a different geometry than my part 1. When we then delete the part from the workspace, or we move it outside of the project altogether, we have this situation. When I then open the assembly, you will see this particular dialog come up. Inventor clearly detects that there is a different part 1 which might be from a completely different origin. So a clear warning here, and it's up to you to decide if the change is fine or not. only accept the resolve, of course, if you're sure that the file in the subfolder is the one you intend to use. In scenario 2, we start once again from an assembly with part 1 resolved correctly. I set the using unique file names to yes. I create a completely different file, and I'll do something similar, so an extruded text, but this time to make it clear that it's a different file, I use completely different text. I have to set it to a Swiss font to make it extrudable, and I use a 1mm distance. It doesn't really matter, it's just to have something different in the file. I now save this file to the subfolder, but I give it the exact same file name. So I'm clearly now have a situation with two different files, same file name, different geometry. If I now move the original part out of the cone of influence by renaming it, for instance, you will see that Inventor, of course, starts looking for similar file names. And lo and behold, in this case, he finds one in the subfolder, of course, and he tells me clearly, do you really want to use that resolve file? So if that is my intent, I can go ahead and pick that file. The third scenario that I want to present here is a scenario where the same file name shows up within the project file in different folders. So here's a situation, an assembly that still uses that same part 1 from the workspace, but we have the same part name in two subfolders. We then remove the original part that was used in the assembly, and we'll have a look what will happen. When we open the assembly after removing the original part, you will see this dialog. It's the similar dialog that you would see when you access the duplicate file name option in the project editor. So once again, we detect duplicate file names, but this time Inventor asks you to make a choice between the two available files with the same name. Here is the third scenario. I have a single subfolder with part 1 in there, and I copy that subfolder to a second subfolder that I call sub2. I now have a situation where I have three files with the same file name. In the project editor, I can find this out with the non-unique project file names function, but also when I open the assembly after renaming my original used part, and let's rename it to part_old. When I open that assembly now, you clearly get the choice between the two remaining files with the same file name.